Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. In this episode, we are joined by Ali Hutchinson, who is a holistic health coach, spiritual mentor, author, and frequency medicine holder. Be prepared to learn the common misconceptions that most people have when it comes to understanding energy, the subtle difference but connection between energy and frequency, biggest lessons that Ali has learned when it comes to understanding both practical applications for raising your energy and frequency so that you can live your best life possible, and so much more. Before that though, this episode is brought to you by Riverside. Riverside is an online studio platform designed to record, edit, and share high quality podcasts built for growth from day one. Powered by AI, you can record in 4K video or from your phone and automatically remove filler words such as ums, as, you knows, and many other speech patterns. Built for human conversations, Riverside makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds amazing. Ready to start your podcast and share your message with the world? Check out the link in the show note description to learn more about Riverside and get a 15%, yes, let's say 15%, 15% discount off a paid subscription. Now, on to today's episode. Ali, welcome to Raising Consciousness today. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No worries. I feel like it's a long time coming. So we've had a few discussions about making this happen, right? And so I'm pleased that we've been able to do so today.
Yeah, no, it's good. Really good.
First question for you is, who are you and what do you do?
Well, the hard one first. So I'm Ali Hutchinson. I'm an intuitive health coach and an empowerment coach. And I work predominantly with women to help them get out of their own way and rediscover their own wild heart. And for me, what that means is coming back to what they really value in themselves and in others, and really supporting them in opening up to those conversations with themselves that make sure that they're living true to their own values, to their own purpose, and really delighting in everything they do. Because I think as women, we spend too many hours, too many times in our lives actually people pleasing, looking after others, and not actually feeling into what it is that we really want. And I find I work with a lot of women that are going into perimenopause and then into menopause, simply because I think as women we get to that age in our life when the patriarchy really wants us to disappear. You know, we don't look like we ought to look on the sort of the magazines. We can't be newsreaders anymore because we've got wrinkles. And whilst it's okay for men to have wrinkles on the 10 o'clock news, it's not okay for women. And I think that's the point when we often stand in our power, but we need the most support in actually making it happen. So yeah, that's sort of what I do.
And why do you do what you do? What's the big why behind your work?
Do you know, I think, you know what they say, when the student's ready, the teacher will appear. And I think I do what I do because when I needed this most, there was nobody there helping me find myself. And I've sort of had to navigate it on my own. And those deep questions that I've asked myself, I just think if I'd had a mentor to really support me, I would have gone through that process much more quickly. And I would have come out the other side knowing what I know now, and feeling like I navigated it in a much less messy way, really.
And why does your work matter? I mean, I kind of want to split that up into kind of two directions in a way. So obviously matter for your clients. So obviously you mostly work with women, as you explained there. But if we have a 46-year-old man here as well, like why should he stay around and listen to the conversation, or somebody my age, you know, like, so can you kind of like walk us through that, why you think your work matters for anyone who's kind of listening to this podcast today, and like why they should stay around for the conversation?
Yeah, great. Well, because I do work with men as well. I don't just predominantly work with women, but more of my work is with women because I think, you know, I'm closer to them. I am a woman. You know, more than half of us are women, and most of those men, whether they're your age, Luke, or whether they're, you know, husbands of women my age, all will have a mother. They will probably have a sister, a sibling, you know, an aunt, and therefore understanding what makes women tick, understanding what your mother's been going through as she goes through menopause, or actually having that understanding for as your wife goes through menopause is really supportive. So it can really help. I know we've had a conversation about your mum, and her menopause journey. It can really help when men understand what's going on in a woman's life. So it matters from that perspective. It obviously matters from a woman's perspective, just because I think for so long we've kept some of those women's issues hidden and we've pretended they haven't been happening when they absolutely have. And I think that does everybody a disservice. Because, the idea that it should all be in the closet and we should keep quiet about it. When people are struggling, and if somebody's struggling in a family, be it the husband or the wife, we need to talk about it. We need to get it out there and chat.
No, definitely. On a practical level, I'm curious in terms of intuitive health coach. So on a practical level, you're working with clients day to day. What does that process actually look like?
Yeah. So every one of my clients is individual. I don't have a cookie cutter effect. So I don't do the same thing with everybody. Everybody comes into it as a unique individual. And I like to treat people like that because I think some people will start their journey very much in a very different place to somebody else. So it's about understanding what their journey looks like, what makes them tick and what support they need and where. So somebody's struggling perhaps with anxiety or, concerns about their workplace would be very different to somebody coming to me that actually is in a family role and struggling with something, or that wants to go back into the workplace and doesn't know where they fit in anymore. So it does depend on what they're looking for. And then because I have a nutrition background, I might look at their health in terms of their nutrition, their gut health, the things that have been preventing them standing in their power in that respect. But then I might use something like EFT tapping to help lower their cortisol levels and really help with anxiety or stress. I work with the frequency device, Healy, so I might use frequency in the quantum field to support them. And that might be about breaking down some limited beliefs that they've got, that they hold in their bioenergetic field, that's in the information field that's around them. So I'm a clairvoyant, so looking at the Akashic records and actually stepping into those Akashic records and seeing what they're holding that might be ancestral that they also need to release and let go of. So it really depends where a client's coming from. And I tend to try and weave cacao, ceremonial cacao, so the chocolate in its rawest, purest form, into as many of those discussions as possible. Just because it's a great neurotransmitter, it really supports us in coming back into our own hearts, and it can be a real mood uplifter. So in a way that coffee isn't, it can be a really great support at the beginning of the day.
Interesting you mentioned cacao there. We had a guest on a few episodes back whose kind of whole work is resulted in that. He's kind of traveled South America and found the purest cacao and created a business out on it, and just kind of learning about the health benefits of cacao and the cacao ceremonies that he does. It was fascinating. So I didn't know that was part of your work, but then again, it's been a long time since we spoke.
Yeah, big part of my work, and a big part of my work. And really, I think at the point at which when I found cacao was when I really stepped into my feminine. So I think, like so many of us, until that point, I really was in that environment where I was hustling to, make ends meet. And I was very much, I've worked for myself for over 20 years. So the idea of going back into corporate life, just fills me with dread. I love being self-employed. I love the freedom it gives me. But I did find, there was a lot of hustle in there. There was a lot of working hard to make money. And I think that's a narrative we often tell ourselves. And then when Cacao found me, and I literally talk about when she found me, because I think she'd been pulling me for a long time and I'd been ignoring her. And when she found me, I literally cracked open. It was as if something had connected my masculine and my feminine and really pulled me back into that true essence. And now I feel I do everything with ease and flow, that it comes naturally, that I have a magneticism around me that just comes from actually sharing my truth. And I think cacao is the thing that really allowed me to open my heart and not care what other people were thinking, and just let it all out.
It's interesting. You didn't know where we were going to go here, but you describe it in the same way as my guest did beforehand. His name was Liam. In terms of cacao found me,
Yeah.
and so it's just this kind of common theme, which I just kind of hooked onto it there, which is fascinating.
Yeah, well, we talk about her as a plant medicine. So, she's one of the key plant medicines, and she really will only work with you when you're ready. And as a child, I was never a chocolate girl. I could take it or leave it. At Easter, I was also always the sibling that had chocolate left over at Easter and then was sharing it out because I didn't really want to eat it. So when actually I started working with her, and I work with her in her rawest, purest form, I don't add plant milks, I don't add, maple syrups and things, literally take her as she comes. And it
So
was
is
a
that just with
real
hot water?
Sorry, Luke.
Sorry, I interrupted you. Yeah, I was just curious on that point. So it's just with hot water?
Yeah, just with hot
Yeah, yeah,
water and
yeah.
like a little pinch of Himalayan salt, little tiny bit of chili. I believe that's how the Mayans, the Incas, the Aztecs would have drunk it. And when you look at the burial sites where they found cacao and they've taken traces of cacao off pots and pans, that is the sort of makeup that they would have been using. So we drink her as we think the Mayans drank her.
Fascinating stuff. Also reading through your work, there was, you, forgive me if I'm wrong, work with a lot with people's energy and frequency and kind of
Yeah.
frequencies and that. What are some common misconceptions that you maybe see or think that people have, whether they're women or men, both, when it comes to energy? Like, I feel like maybe it's a link to more like our spiritual side as well, like that connection. But it seems that a lot of people still, although I feel there's a little bit of a change of the guards, see it as like a bit woo-woo, like when they talk about energy. And I'm kind of interested in the common misconceptions that you've seen and experienced when you've kind of started to work with people.
Yeah, great question. So I think, lots of people see energy work as woo-woo, don't they? But when we look at people that are around us, we all know people that we're naturally drawn to. And it's usually because they have the same energy as us. And when you walk into that room and you see those people that are radiators, that are like beaming energy into the room, if you're also a radiator, you want to be drawn towards them. You want to be part of their sphere. But we all also know friends that are like drains that literally suck the energy from you. But they're often also surrounded by people that are of the same ilk. They're people that maybe moan a lot, maybe complain a lot, maybe have, speak derogatorily of about people. And that's all about energy. So I think you can, whether you can read people's auras, whether you see lights, whether you notice that people do read people's energy. And it really is about us tapping into that and then looking at where that source comes from. And then each day being able to pull more of that energy from source, from God, from spirit, from the universe, whatever you want to call it, that actually then supports you in creating more of your own personal energy. And whether that's about grounding yourself in nature and using those negative ions of the earth to actually ground you, that then counter all the positive ions that we have running around us all day, from our smartphones, etc. Whether that's getting out in nature and, hugging a tree, or whether that's just stargazing, gazing at the moon, being near water, getting your feet in the ocean, whatever it is, I think we've all had those experiences where we've been in one of those situations where we've allowed our energy to flow and it's changed us. We felt calmer, we felt more relaxed, we felt more creative. We've had those intuitive nudges when we're on a walk and we've got nothing, we're not actually walking, looking at our smartphone. We're actually looking at the trees, we're listening to the breeze, we're watching animals in a field. That's when we get those intuitive hits that you go, and they're the moments when your energy is really working for you.
How do people, I don't know if the word I'm about to use is necessarily the right word, but how do you recommend people, quote unquote, protect their energy, if it even needs protecting per se, from those that maybe are in their circles, maybe it's at their job or in, friends or family and people that they're around, that maybe that they don't feel like they can just dissociate with straight away, like after listening to our podcast, but they are draining their energy. Like, from my perspective, one way that I've tried to manage and handle this is to come into like the frequency of like empathy and compassion for like the other person. It's harder said than done most of the time.
Yeah.
But that's kind of one thing that I try and do. What tips or how do you work with people who maybe have that challenge?
Yeah. So I think working with a coach can really support you in doing that. And I have a few exercises that I work with clients, but just allowing yourself to create an energy bubble of protection around you can be really powerful. So you can do it by visualizing a bubble of energy. You can draw a bubble of energy from source and literally create your own little sort of like a snow globe that you're inside, so that people's energy can touch it but can't get into you. You can also create what I call energetic roses. And you create a rose in your mind's eye and you add like a property of stickiness to it. And you just mop up all their energy that's around you. And then you send it out way beyond your aura, out into the universe, and explode it so that it then can't attach you. You might use a frequency device. So I use the Healy frequency device, a little wearable, and it has energy protection programs on it. So you can put an energy protection program on for the planet, for EMF energy, for personal energy, for groups. And it's a really beautiful way of just clearing down that energy. And then the other thing I like to do is throughout my day, I will just close out of one system and step into another system. And I liken this as an energy practice to, if you imagine you get up in the morning and you've turned your bedroom light on and you've gone to the bathroom and you've turned the bathroom light on and you've gone down the stairs, the landing lights on, the stair lights on, the kitchen lights on. You've got all this energy running around you. And maybe you've been through 20 rooms in the day and all the lights are on and it's using energy all over the place. If you step out of each system and close it, like you've closed the bedroom door and you've switched the bedroom light off, you've closed the bathroom door, you've switched the bathroom light off, you haven't got all this energy running around all day, and you actually step into really clean energy as you do each thing. So before I came on the podcast, I would just say energetically to myself, my intention is to step out of my day-to-day work and step onto the podcast with Luke. And then I come off this. My intention is to step off the podcast with Luke and go into whatever I'm going to next. And that way you only have one light on at any one time. And therefore that light can be brighter, it can be more radiant, you can be more present, and you can have more concentration. It's a beautiful system.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a bit of thinking because you have to remember to keep doing it. As you remember through the day, it's so incredible. It really is supportive.
Yeah, I was just thinking there, like, that would require a certain level of maybe consciousness as well, because I feel like our modern day lives are so busy, right? So we're running from that one room to the other, to the other, to the other. Maybe not consciousness, maybe like like mindfulness as well. Like as we're going about our day, like, as you said, that remember to turn the light off in this room. I'm just kind of trying to make connections between things I've learned in the past and obviously learning here. Do you think like that's where mindfulness practices and meditation can kind of help us to become more grounded and like live in the present moment more, so then we can remember to turn the light off in this room, in that room, etc.
Yeah, definitely. And then just having some natural triggers. So maybe, your trigger is you look at your diary, what's next? And then that's the trigger that goes, oh yeah, I've got to switch out of that system and step into this new system. So you can also set timers on your clock. You can have stickies around the office or around the kitchen, on the fridge, because often when you go into the house, you're stepping out of one system into another, whether going into the fridge is because you're working at the kitchen table or you're working from home. But actually you could step away from work then and have a 10-minute break and then step back into it. So just having some of those triggers around you. But I think, the more mindful you can be, the better.
And why does, as what we're talking about here in terms of managing our energy, why does that matter for like our health and our day-to-day lives?
Yeah, well, when you think about how busy we are as individuals and how prevalent stress is, anxiety, high cortisol levels, and we know that stress leads to inflammation, and inflammation is the first form of disease. And dis-ease, when you think about how easy we've made our lives, I see all these kids on scooters, electric scooters, not walking anywhere, and then actually ending up with, problems that they're not fit, they're not active, they've got heart problems, maybe they've got obesity issues. But like, if you can actually prevent dis-ease and come back into living well, then actually our life is better. Our life, we'll have a longer, healthier life. And that's, I think, what we all want. We all want to live into old age, but we want to live into old age, feeling good, not feeling like we're going to be a burden to somebody because, we've no longer got our faculties or our mobility. And that's why I think actually the more mindful you can be, the better you are as you go through life.
We've mentioned the word frequency a couple of times. I think I have. What is energy and frequencies? Are they like the same thing? Is there a symbiotic relationship? Is there subtle differences? Yeah, talk to us about
Yeah,
that.
there's a symbiotic relationship. We think about energy, and energy is all around us because if we break down an atom to its subatomic particles in quantum physics, which is what the Healy is dealing with, what we're left with is 99.99999% recurring empty space. So that is just energy. And every organ, every cell, every item has its own frequency. So you think about two different tuning forks. If they're on the same frequency, if they were in different sides of the room, if I strike tuning fork A, if tuning fork B is at the same frequency, they will resonate. They will both start moving. So when you use something like the Healy frequency device, if you have cells within, say, your liver that you want to support with frequency, those cells will hear the frequency that the Healy is sending to you to bring them back into coherence. And that's supporting your ATP production. So the energy in your cell, think of it like a battery in a kind of mobile phone. When your battery runs really low, then your mobile phone stops doing things. It starts saying, shall I put you into that sort of, I can't think what the mode is called, but it puts you into that mode, doesn't it, where you can't do very much because your battery's too low.
Yeah.
I can't think what it's called, but
You have like airplane mode, but that's I've seen that.
something like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if your cells are like that, then there's certain things your body's not doing effectively. So by sending these frequencies that support those cells, and it's about protein synthesis, which we know is about mitochondrial health, and that supports then your overall health. And it's boosting those cells so that you end up with healthy cells that give you more energy. So when you come back into frequency, you're basically supporting yourself, mind, body, and spirit.
How does one raise their frequency? What are some of the best ways that you recommend to clients? And is that also like a personalized approach as well for your coaching?
Yes. Yeah. So everybody will have the thing that works best for them. Maybe 3 of my top things are getting out in nature, getting your feet on the bare earth. Even on a day like today when, it's December, it's cold, if you can get your feet on the bare earth and just allow those negative ions from the earth, or have a grounding sheet in your bed, in your office, can be really, really supportive. Getting out into nature and just allowing your eyes to refocus so they're not, a foot away from you looking at your screen all day, or 6 inches away from you looking at your phone, but they're looking into the distance. They're looking into different shapes, different textures, different environments. And they're doing that like short distance, long distance, medium distance. So you're allowing your eyes to relax. And then using something like a frequency device that would really support you. Something like the Healy can actually analyze you in the here and now and look at where you're holding yourself out of balance with your original blueprint, whether that's mind, body, or spirit. So working with a device like that has no bias. So it's not you saying, oh, I think it's this. It's actually the device going, oh, I see you as you ought to be seen, and you're slightly off balance right now. Let me help you to come back into balance. And that, I think, can be really, really powerful.
For those who maybe don't have the Healy device, we'll link it down below so they can check more of that out. So definitely check out the show notes. I remember when we first met and you were kind of sharing the Healy device with me, I was fascinated by it. But for those that don't have one yet, or maybe they're in a different financial situation or whatever it is, and they're going to save up for one, or whatever their situation is there, and kind of in the theme of living more mindfully, if we live more mindfully, are there certain signs that we can pay attention to see when our frequency is off without frequency devices? We'll get back talking to Ali in just one moment, but before we do so, I would just like to take a quick break to mention Soma Breath. Soma Breath is an holistic school and community with no single guru, where you get to learn a range of pranayama breathing techniques and discover the power of breathwork tailored to your specific needs. The thing that I love about Soma Breath is that it combines ancient wisdom with modern science, which is very fitting for this podcast to overall help promote wellness, longevity, reduce stress and anxiety, and achieve holistic health. Their methods are currently being studied by Cambridge University, and everyone at Soma is very, very excited to discover the results. From their online courses to membership, live classes, and certification programs, you have everything that you need to learn the power of breathwork and improve your health with a community right alongside you. You can get started on your Soma Breath journey today by visiting the link in the show notes below and experiencing the transformation for yourself. I would highly recommend it. But now let's get back to today's episode, talking with Ali Hutchinson.
Yeah, well, just every morning when you wake up, just having a few minutes when you lie in bed and you go, what's my mood today? So I like to liken it, like the if you were thinking about, is it cloudy? Is it rainy? Is it sunny? Is it cloudy with a few meatballs? Is that the movie? Just lie there and go, actually, how do I feel today? And just tap in and check in and lie there and just go, yeah, actually, I am feeling a bit sad. Well, I wonder why I'm feeling sad, and just feel into that. Allow the sadness to be there. Don't try and hide the sadness. Accept it. Look at it. And then just think, well, maybe today's going to be one of those days that I just feel a little bit sad. I wonder what I could do that would support this. Is it that I'm sad because of something? Is it because I'm sad because I'm on my own and haven't seen people? Could I go and do something that would support me and would help me change this? And it's not about the sadness is wrong. It's just that actually understanding the sadness gives you then the tools that means you can maybe move from sadness to sunnier, if that's where you want to be. And it's like getting a weather forecast. What's my weather, my personal weather that I'm going to take with me throughout my day? And actually, if it isn't sunny today, what could I do that could actually give me some glimmers of sunshine today?
Reminds me of a quote that another podcaster that I listen to quite a lot. Don't want to butcher it, but he said something like, learn to feel feelings without judgment,
Yeah.
reacting, and there was a third thing, so I did butcher it. But and that just kind of reminded me of like, actually, yeah, because so often a feeling or emotion comes up
Yeah.
within us, and we do judge it, like the ego judges it, or like sadness, oh, this is good or bad, mostly bad, right? Like, oh, I feel sad, oh, this is bad. It's like, actually, no, like I like to view our emotions and feelings as feedback signals,
Yes.
ultimately,
Yeah.
and that we can learn and grow from. As you were talking there, it kind of reminded me of
Yeah.
of that, and that I think that's a skill,
Yeah.
I think that's a skill that we can,
yeah. And it's definitely something you can teach yourself, because I don't think we naturally have that. Because when you think of it as children, we often say to children, don't do that. You're not sad. Tell them they're not sad, as opposed to saying, is that how you feel? Let's explore that with you. If you've lost a pet, a loved one, a family member, why wouldn't you feel sad? You're not going to feel sunny, and actually sitting with that and accepting that, it can be really peaceful. Society wants us just to get on with life, but why should we? We actually should be able to feel into those feelings so that we can actually manage them in the way that is best for us. Because when you try and hide things like that, it's another way you suppress emotions, and then you end up getting ill.
No, yeah, totally. For those or for people who maybe are, in terms of frequency and energy, maybe they're going through a rough patch in terms of depression, anxiety, etc. Again, like these are not just, but I don't want to simplify it, but these are our energies, right? And I feel like sometimes then the stigma comes and we associate our like personality to these vibrations, etc. What are some things that they can do to start to like get out of that? And I know we've kind of spoken about raising our vibration, touching nature, going out into nature, etc. But like somebody who is let's just say, super depressed and they're like, just stay in their room, to now all of a sudden going out into, it's like a big jump, So I feel like there needs to be incremental steps, or maybe we have someone in our lives that like in that situation. From your experience, like, what are some things that can start to change that? Does it basically come down to that person having the self-realization themselves? Yeah, just kind of want to explore that a little bit more for those that wouldn't go out and do the earthing, straight away.
Yeah, I think it's really hard to generalize, because I think when somebody's in that situation, when they are, particularly if they're clinically depressed and that they've maybe sought help from a GP and they're taking some medication, then you can't generalize, because what is going to work for one person is not necessarily going to work for everybody. In the same way that the medication, possibly won't, they'll all need different strengths, etc. But it's about taking those baby steps. So I would say the first thing is probably to talk to somebody. And whether that's a family member or, you using one of the helplines from someone that actually can start to listen to you. And it's not even necessarily that you need empathy. It's just that you need to be able to talk about it. And then also to recognizing yourself when those moods ebb and flow, and being able to, take that weather report. So yes, I am depressed, but am I depressed to the same state every day? And could I look at yesterday and go, well, actually, yesterday was a different day to today, and tomorrow will be a different day to today. And then just move very, very slowly, incremental steps from that. But I think opening a dialogue and being open and honest about how we feel and, how that's affecting us can really, really help people to start moving forward.
What are some of the biggest lessons that you personally have learned about energy?
Gosh, that it ebbs and flows, that you can't naturally make it do what you want to do. That actually there's so many other things that are affected, but that actually having a toolkit of practices that you can call upon when you feel your energy slipping can be so powerful. And I liken it to having, it's like having your sponge bag at the gym. And, you've just done a workout and you want to get in the shower, and your sponge bag has got all those tools in to wash your hair and wash your body and, have a shave or do whatever you want to do. And if you've got all those that toolkit ready prepared, and the things, and you've used them enough times, when you need them, you can call upon them and they literally are at your disposal. So they're ready. So for instance, the sit breath, I call it the sit breath. And you just take I'll show you. You go, so it's 2 sips in and then a long exhale. And that naturally moves you from that fight and flight from your sympathetic nervous system into your rest and digest, the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's a tool that you can have at your disposal. Once you've learnt it, it's really simple. Everyone on your podcast probably knows now. What's the sit breath? You go, you do it a couple of times. You can do it anywhere. So one of my meditation clients came to me the other day and said, Ali, I had this amazing opportunity to use one of your tools today. And I was like, oh, wow, what were you doing? And she'd driven over to Wales. She had to go on the bridge. She hates crossing the bridge. She said, I get really panicked. On the way there, I had a real panic attack. I'm in the middle of the bridge. I'm driving. I'm like hyperventilating. I feel terrible. And she said, so I thought before I came back, I knew I had to come across the bridge on the way home. She was like, what can I do? And she said, your sit breath popped into my head. So before I got in the car, I did the sit breath. As I was driving towards the bridge, I did the sit breath. I'm doing the sit breath as I'm driving onto the bridge. And she said, I could actually look up and look at the gantry and actually think, gosh, it's actually a beautiful bridge. She said, and I made it across the bridge without really feeling anxious. She said it was incredible. But she said, I wouldn't have been able to do it if I didn't have that tool. And it's only that we've used that tool a number of times. And it didn't come to her on the way there. She was too panicked. But once she thought about it, what tools do I have? She could use it on the way back. And having those tools at your disposal that maybe you've picked up online, maybe you've picked up from reading a book, maybe you've picked up from, working with a coach, can be really, really powerful for you.
Yeah, I often refer to the journey, like the self-improvement journey or just one's health journey as like collecting all these tools. So if it is different breath work methodologies, because obviously when we, with on the podcast covered breathwork a lot of times, and there's different kind of within breathwork, lots of different practices.
Yeah.
And obviously this the sit breath as well, meditation, different mindfulness techniques. I think at the beginning you mentioned EFT as well, which
Yeah.
I'm assuming is another tool
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
people
EFT
can
tapping, where
use.
you tap on different points within the body, which are acupressure points. So they use Chinese meridians. So you tap at the crown of your head and between your eyebrows, the side of your brow, and it just helps to relax and change your neural pathways. So yeah, it's a beautiful technique.
And like with these tools, one thing that's just come to me is like, I don't know, I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but like with the breath tool that you just gave, like that's very instant. But I also feel like some tools are maybe more gradual. You know, it's like a meditation practice. I feel like that's helped me over the longer term deal with anxieties and just help me just generally be a more kind of calm, more calm person and live in the present moment more. So when we're kind of exploring all these tools, is that something like, what's your thoughts on that? Do you feel like there are these instant tools that we can use, and then like a tool like meditation, which is more gradual?
Yeah, I think there's things that work instantly. So, like the sit breath works instantly on your nervous system. And sometimes that's exactly what we need. You know, sometimes if we're in that state, you don't have 10 minutes to go and meditate. And if you did, you know, you can meditate anywhere. That's what I love about meditation. So, you know, if you're at work, you can take yourself into the loo and meditate, you know, if you don't want to sit at your desk. What I love about the sit breath is you can do it anywhere. Like you could be standing in the supermarket checkout having a bit of a panic attack. You can do the sit breath. The person either side of you is not going to have a clue that you're trying to regulate your nervous system. It's such a beautiful practice. Whereas if you start EFT tapping, they might think, you know, what's going on. But equally, you can tap it's called the kung fu point on your hand, like the chopping point. You can tap there whilst you're, you know, just talking yourself down. And that's really good, just lowering your nervous system as well. Again, you could be doing that in the supermarket queue and nobody would know. But yeah, other things are going to look, you know, if you're standing in the park barefoot in December and you're hugging a tree, you know, people are going to go, actually, she's doing something strange. I think you just have to let them think that, because eventually, if I had my way, we'd all be hugging trees, you know, and it would be perfectly normal. We'd all be walking around barefoot. But yeah, there are things that maybe are easier to weave into your life without, again, the whole woo-woo, without people going, oh, they're a bit woo-woo.
So let's touch upon that briefly, because I think from my experience and close people around me, in a way, like in a way, earthing, these sorts of practices, when I discovered them, resonated with me. And then like you have that part of you that's like, if I do that, people are gonna like look at me, and you would just become so self-conscious. What's but then obviously I did it, right? And then I realized that actually most people, I mean, I don't know what somebody's actually thinking, but most of the time I just get the impression like most people don't care because they've got their own shit to deal with, right? Like, so like we build up this narrative in our head. But I'm curious, like, do you have any thoughts or insights or words of wisdom on that switch that needs to happen? Because yeah, for so long I felt I was resonated with these practices, and other people that I know have been, but that perception has put them off. And I'm just kind of, for any listeners out there, just kind of want to encourage them to move more in this direction, because for me, like the benefits are just amazing, right? And you kind of come more into yourself. And I've kind of been thinking a lot about like this idea of getting back to becoming more human, and like this is all part of that kind of journey and stuff. So yeah, I don't know if you have any insights or thoughts there.
Yeah, I think the more you do these things, the more natural they become. And I think we all, in a sense, look around us and think self-consciously, other people aren't doing it. Is this normal? Because unless you've been brought up in a family that meditate, that get into nature and hug trees and earth, and why wouldn't that be natural? I mean, I would say that that's where we'd like to be, because if you went back, you know, to the 15th century, People were living on the land and they were living with the seasons, and they would have walked barefoot, and it was all very much natural. And there was nothing strange about it. And really, it's only when we've become civilized, whatever that means, that we've started wearing shoes and we've started sitting behind computers and having, blue light around us all day. And really, that's the abnormality now, isn't it, if we think about it? Because that's where commercialism comes in. They've made that normal. And actually, they've said, doing the things that might give you pleasure but don't cost any money is not normal. So going to the beach for the day and, running barefoot on the sand and not spending a penny, you can have the most amazing day, but nobody's profiting in terms of big organizations. And therefore, how's that feeding the economy? And obviously it's feeding the economy in lots of ways. But, let's not get into the whole idea of, mass manufacturing and things. So I think, we do overthink what people are thinking. But I think exactly what you said, isn't it? Is it Jim Rohn, the American speaker, said everybody's too busy thinking about their own stuff to be worrying about your stuff. And they might glance at you and wonder what you're doing, but then they're on to the next thing. They're not thinking about you for the next 24 hours and wondering what you were doing. So actually, if you find practices that support you and make you feel better, I would say stick with them. And the more you practice them and the more you embed them, then the more natural they feel. And then if someone does ask you about them, you're just going to openly say, it makes me feel like this. And I think the more that is normalized, think of Headspace and the amount of people that actually have Headspace on their phones these days, or, all the apps, the meditation apps. It's really normalizing it. Whereas 20 years ago when I was meditating, not so much. But now it's like it's a real part of how actually we know it regulates our nervous system. It's good for us.
An old podcast that I did, we had a guest on, and I'll probably end up butchering this as well, but they said something like, so often we have thoughts thinking about what other people are thinking, but that's not their thoughts, that's our thoughts in a way, if that makes sense. It's just like, and that's always stuck with me. And so whenever I'm like in that headspace of thinking of like, oh, they thinking about me, it's like, actually, I can't tell what somebody else is thinking. Like, that's my thought. And so all I can control is my thoughts, my actions, etc. And so then I started to see thoughts of like the past, like passing clouds of the mind, just like, oh, having this thought, just let it pass. Again, sometimes much harder than others. But, it's all a practice, and I think it's all part of the journey of life and striving to become better in that.
And also, I always say, and I remember teaching my daughter this when she was quite young, how someone makes you feel is entirely down to you. So, if you say something to me and I react to it, it's me that's reacting. It's not what you've said. It's my reaction because it's something within me that it's triggered. And I remember teaching her that. And then one day saying to her, you're making me feel this. And she turned around and went, Mummy, but the way someone makes you feel is entirely down to you. And I was like, darn it, why did I teach her that?
Yeah.
But I was like, and I said, you are so true, darling. And I'm going to think about that because it is true. It's, it's where we come to, which probably brings us full circle to, you said something at the beginning, and I can't remember what the question was. It was about how we perceive things. And I often say to people, let me see love instead of this. So when we're arguing with somebody or we see it as a battle or there's something that sort of feels out of kilter, when you look at that person, if you can say, let me see love instead of this, and it's a quote from Gabby Bernstein, it's really hard to see someone in a negative when you're trying to see them through the eyes of love. It's really hard to hope bad for somebody when you're seeing them through the eyes of love. So it's an instant way of turning how you feel about something around. Because when we see it with the eyes of love, you don't see the destruction or you don't see the pain. You actually see the growth, which is what's so beautiful.
Sounds like another tool to add to our toolbox of seeing people through the eyes of love. Ali, what's one thing today that we didn't speak about that's you think we should have spoken about that's related to what we have spoken about, if that makes sense?
Oh my goodness. I would say the only thing we haven't really spoken about that we perhaps could just touch on is how, when you're working in the information field, so the information field that's all around us, we believe the information field, the Akashic record, has a note of everything, past, present, and future, that has ever happened, will happen, an emotion, a feeling, an incident. And when we work in that record, the information field, and it's in quantum physics, it's really hard to get your head around. But when we're working in that information field, we can really support ourselves, mind, body, spirit, and we can change the trajectory of our life and quantum leap in a way that we can't do when we're living in the past or looking to the present. Because in terms of quantum physics, the idea of actually being able to quantum leap, you could go anywhere in an instant and life would change. And I think that is like a powerful thought when you hold on to that.
So I know very little about quantum physics and kind of what you shared there. However, like just being curious about health and then like seeing health as also, or like spirituality is one area of health. Like obviously I've dipped my toes, but I know very little. And I am going to assume that a lot of our listeners also are probably at the beginning, more at the beginning stage of that. If they are curious, like I am, about learning more about that, and as you said, it can get very complex from what I do understand. Is there any books you recommend? Like, where should people go if they are curious about that and want to dive into it further?
So we believe everything originates with conscious thought. So you could research quantum entanglement or the observer effect or non-locality and look at that side of quantum physics. So that will give you an idea of where conscious thought starts to begin. And then in terms of the information field, we believe that every piece of information, not just the physical, so the physical body, but the energy body, our subconscious thoughts, our beliefs, our unresolved traumas, our ancestral and genetic patterns are stored in the information field. And when you tap into that information field, you can unlock those things that have been holding you stuck or stagnant or holding you back from stepping into your true self. And that is some of the work that I like to do in my coaching sessions, because when we step into the information field and we look at what's holding you back, it might not be something in the here and now. It might be something that you've stored in your subconscious from your childhood or from a past life or a past trauma. And that's what makes it really, really powerful to do that side of the coaching.
Ali, thank you so much. Where should people go if they want to learn more about your work and keep up to date with everything that you've got going on?
Well, thank you. So they can follow me on Instagram. I'm Wild Heart Wellbeing, and my website is wildheartwellbeing.co.uk, or they can just message me. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, etc.
Amazing. Well, Ali, thank you so much for your time today. I've definitely learned a ton, been reminded of a ton, and I'm definitely going to implement some of what we've learned and discussed today. So thank you thank you once again.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad I've inspired you, and I hope you inspire some of your listeners. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
I hope that you've enjoyed my conversation today with Ali Hutchinson, where we've been exploring energy, frequency, and most things, I think, in between. What are you taking away from this episode, and what positive changes are you going to make in your life as a result? Please do leave a comment and review below this episode, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you get your podcasts from. I read every single comment and review and appreciate you being here. I look forward to sharing the next episode of the show with you really, really soon. See you then.